to the Life History App podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how to scan photos and documents into your life history. Let's get started with how you kind of get organized.
The first step to scanning your printed physical photos is to get them all together in one place. This may seem a little overwhelming, but trust me. This step will help you to eliminate duplicates and let you know the scope of your scanning project before you start. The second step is to sort them by person or by theme. At this point, don't worry about organizing them by date. Third, after you've sorted your printed photos by person or theme, the third step is to organize each stack into 3 categories. The first is your favorites, the second is your discard pile, and the third is undecided. Let's talk about your favorites. Think of these as the images that you would be most interested in seeing or sharing if it were to appear in a magazine 10 years from now. Also remember to include things other than physical photos in your favorites pile, such as certificates, report cards, favorite objects, newspaper articles, or pictures, etc. These historical documents and images will add to the interest of your story. In your discard pile, you should place all duplicates, blurry or out of focus images of things that simply don't matter to you or to anyone else. This pile won't need to be scanned or organized any further. I encourage you to have someone you trust quickly go through this stack before you throw them away. And your last stack is your undecided stack. This pile may deserve a second look in the future, or it could come in handy if you want to add interest or variety to your story later on. You can reserve the images in this stack for later review. At some point, you may decide to place most of these images in your discard pile for disposal. Remember that people who later read your autobiography or family history will not be interested in several images of the same event. What you're looking for are images that you can use as anchors to your life or family history stories or chapters in your book. Of course, not every photo that you have will be perfect, and sometimes less than perfect is the best you can do. And in these cases, it's better to have a less than perfect image than none at all in your final book. So let's discuss your favorites in a little bit more detail. As you put a photo or other document into your favorites pile, I encourage you to lightly jot down the date taken on the back of each image or item in pencil so that it won't bleed through while you're sorting. This will save you time later when it's time to start scanning everything. Use this format for your dates: year, month, and day, like 2021-03-20. Make sure you add zeros to single-digit numbers like 02, 03, or 04 instead of 2, 3, or 4. The great thing about this date format is that when you scan and name the scanned images, you can begin your file names with this date. This will cause your computer to automatically sort them by year, month, and date order when you save them on your computer. You will appreciate this when you start including them in your life story, I promise. For many images, you will not know the exact date. In these cases, I encourage you to involve others who were with you when the photo was taken if you can. Ask them for their best guess and adjust that by your best recollection and enter something. Often, when you know a photo was shot at Easter in a certain year, you can just ask Siri what date Easter fell on in 1983 and use that date. If I knew an image was taken in the fall of the year, like 2011, I might use a date like 2011-10-10 or 2011-09-09. It's better than not adding any date, and the image will automatically fall into your life history in the approximately correct time frame. You might also replace the month or date with XX, such as 2022-XX-XX. This is only a temporary solution though. Before you add an image to your life or family history book, you will want to verify the actual date that you want to use for the image. Sometimes you'll see the date printed either on the face, margin, or back of a photo by the photo developer. This will not be the date the photo was taken, but rather the date that it was developed. You can often use these dates, if available, to inform your best date estimates. In addition to the date taken, you will also want to jot down the who, what, where, and or why about the photo or document you want to scan. The most important of these elements is the who, because 50 or 100 or 200 years from now, nobody will have any way of knowing who is in the photograph if you don't record it. Let's talk now about the actual process of scanning your images. And before we do that, let's talk about getting ready to scan. Before you start scanning your favorite photos and documents, I encourage you to set up a separate folder on your computer for your book project. I would place this folder under the My Documents folder, and I would call the folder by the name of the person for whom you are creating the book. If you have several people for whom you want to create books, I would first create a folder called My Family, and under that folder, you could create a separate folder for each person. This is the main folder into which you will scan the photos for that person. Typically, your scanner software will ask you what folder you want to save your scanned images to the first time you start scanning, and will remember it after your first scanning session each time you return to scan more images. While you are creating folders, I recommend that you also create another folder under each person's folder. I would name this folder open parentheses used in uppercase letters, close parentheses. By creating this used folder inside the person's folder, you will have a place to move all the images as you upload them into Life History app to become part of your Life History book. This will result in leaving only the unuploaded files in your main folder. After your main folder is empty, you will know that everything has been uploaded and included in your Life History app secure workspace. Now let's talk about the actual scanning process. Of course, you're going to want to hook up your scanner to your computer and follow the instructions that came with your scanner to scan your photos and documents. When prompted where you want to save the scanned images, point your scanning software to your main folder that you created as we described in the paragraph above. I recommend that you use the following settings for scanning photos. For the file type, always scan as JPEGs. It takes up less space to store. It's a very efficient and widely adopted file format. The resolution, I always recommend 300 dots per inch for the resolution of a photograph. And for compression, if your software asks that, I would use either no or low compression. For documents and certificates and things other than photographs, I usually scan these at a little lower resolution of 200 dpi. If given an opportunity to identify the scan area for an image or photo, use the selection area handles to isolate the borders of the image or document that you want to include. When saving the scanned image, ensure that you're saving to the new main folder that you previously created for your project, and use the naming convention outlined above, which includes the date and the name. For example, if you were to scan an image of Bob Jones fishing at the Deer Creek Reservoir in 2011, your file name would be 2011-11-04- Bob Jones fishing at Deer Creek Reservoir.jpg. Now there's some things to remember as you scan your photographs and documents. Always save them as a JPEG or with an extension of JPG. The Life History app system assumes that you will be uploading a JPEG image for all your files. You can upload any kind of files, but only JPEG files will be displayed in your history timelines. Other file types will require that you download them in order to view them. Now let's talk about the ideal image dimensions. The default width of images for the Life History app timelines is 900 pixels wide. You may upload images that are narrower or wider than 900 pixels. However, if the images are significantly narrower than 900 pixels, you may begin to recognize a reduction in the clarity of the image. Smaller files, which are narrower, will load and display faster, but they may not display satisfactorily. Images wider than 900 pixels will load and display somewhat slower, but they will display as if they were saved as 900 pixels wide. The optimal image width for display and printing will be between 900 and 1000 pixels wide. All images will be displayed proportionately, regardless of their native width or height or size. Now, another thing you're going to want to keep in mind, aside from scanning, is that you almost certainly have many image files on your computer scattered all over the place from your smartphone or other sources that you've collected over time. We suggest that you copy all of these existing digital images that you have, which relate to the history project on which you're working, into the main folder that you created for your history project, along with your newly scanned images. As you copy these existing files into your main folder, you should ensure that each image in the main folder follows the naming conventions suggested earlier in this podcast. Now, let's talk about how you rename a file. Sometimes your scanner will arbitrarily save your file with an arbitrary file name that it creates. If that happens, or if you are renaming files that you've copied from other folders on your computer, you're going to want to be able to rename those files. Now, if you're on a Mac, you simply select the item by highlighting it, then you press the Enter key or the Return key, or force click the item's name. Then you can enter a new name in place of the old. You can use numbers and most symbols. You can't include a colon or start the name with a period. Some apps may not allow you to use a slash in a file name either. Once you've got the name entered the way you want it, simply press Return and it will replace the old name with the new name you've provided. Now, if you're using Microsoft Windows 10, do the following. First, click on the file to select it. Then click Rename from the Home menu at the top of File Explorer. Once the name is selected, you can start to type the new name. If you've configured File Explorer to show extensions, make sure only to change the file name itself and not the extension. Remember, all of your image files or scanned documents should have a .jpg extension. When you're done typing, press Enter to save the new name. Alternatively, you can click on the file name to select it, and then click the F2 key to rename it. Then press Enter to save the new name. Once you've got several, if not all, of your images or documents stored in your main folder, you can start uploading your images to your Life History app. Now, to do that, you just simply log into lifehistoryapp.com and select the Add Content option to upload your images or documents. You may wish to review our third podcast about adding content, which explains how to accomplish this. I hope this helps you to organize your photos and your documents that you want to include in your life history. And I look forward to talking with you in our next podcast.